I'm fascinated when somebody has an aha moment when they had narratives in their mind for so long, and then the narratives change. And obviously, it's not because of one thing. It's a compound effect of exposure to different ideas and different narratives and maybe life experiences, and you really go through it yourself. It's like, you and I, our families both come from former communist countries.
Yeah.
And I have, you have a rise of leftists over here, and they're talking about socialism. Like, you motherfuckers never lived through socialism. Like, quote unquote, whatever the fuck real socialism is.
Right. It's not real socialism,
I'm
of
like,
course. Yeah.
Both our parents left. They ran away from think about it. They left the country, they left their friends, they left their family because how fucked up it was to come somewhere better. But yet you have people over here that have never experienced that saying,
no.
Fucking socialism.
Yeah. Give me more stuff, more free stuff. My parents came here, they barely had $100 to their name. Like, we had to go into recycle bins, we had to go to the garbage. Like, if we found a TV in the garbage that turned on, this was like Christmas for me. It was amazing. Whatever was on the side of the street, right? Hand-me-downs, like, that was life. And frankly, it was a happy life. You really appreciated what little you had. And coming from a place like Soviet Russia, where, I tell this story, and it's like, it's gonna be my grandpa's story, but like, I waited for 4 hours to get a banana in line. 4 hours. Bananas happened to come in. You never had them. People lined up, and myself as like a 4-year-old or whatever, I had to wait for 4 hours to get a banana, which was probably not ripe anyway. So my father, for him especially, seeing him, because he's gone through hell and hellwater to get here, it's really tough for him to see what's happening socially, what things are kind of like accepting carte blanche, so to speak.
Why do you think this is happening?
I think as human beings, there is this like, it's almost like a bias, let's call it. But when things get too good, we begin to look for problems. There's even a study that came out that kind of touches on this. I don't remember who the researcher was, but essentially, when our life becomes really, really good, and when we kind of go up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so to speak, and check off all those boxes, we have everything we need, we often begin to look for problems. Let's say before we get to that place where it's like real self-fulfillment and like making an impact, leaving a legacy, before we get to that point, once all of other physical needs are met, we start to look for social problems to fix, things to complain about. It's very easy to look elsewhere, a gaping hole inside of us, so that, again, we don't have to live our arete moment.
I have a hard time grasping the mindset of certain individuals, because it's one thing to maybe talk about that pre-circa communist Russia, or Russia, Yugoslavia, all this former China. But we have so much historical evidence today of how bad that system is. Millions and millions dead. But yet, it's like, why the cognitive dissonance? Like, here's what has happened under systems like that. Oh, no, our system will be better.
Dude, I think you hit it on, you hit the nail on the head, so to speak. Like, number one, I think there's a few things there that we can touch base on. It's the fact that, like, we're not very good with evidence, right? We dig our heels in when we're presented with evidence that's contrary to whatever our opinion of the day happens to be, even if it's blatantly wrong and based on no evidence, nothing substantial, everything circumstantial. We dig our heels in, right? Because it's like a fight. So I think that's part of it. I think a lot of us just aren't taught the full history, number one. Like, I think the educational system needs a bit of a revamp, a little bit of a rejig.
Revamp, huh? It's an understatement.
Yeah, being polite here. And then the other component is just us, man. It's like we like to be asleep. We like to have our comfort. We like to feel like, no, I'm good. I know my stuff. I've got an opinion. Yeah. And so we just ignore evidence. And it's tough for everybody. Like, this is why even in science, sometimes a generation of scientists has to die before like a new novel idea or theory will be adopted. And it's just those friggin' pesky cognitive biases back.
It's like the guy with the H. pylori study.
Yeah.
So he was saying for the longest time, like H. pylori is a thing. Like, this isn't like a symptom of something else. And for the longest time, researchers and scientists like, no, dude, you're crazy. And eventually, like, I'll show you, he drank it. Like, I'll show you in real time that H. pylori does fucking exist.
That was a crazy moment. That was a kind of balls deep, hero's journey moment.
Yeah. And so for me, it's fascinating because yes, people have different narratives, and social media is exponentially piggybacking off our already biases that we have and making it worse and creating something called a wedge, a chasm. And you have now minority groups of all different spectrums screaming the loudest. Generally speaking, most people just want to live in peace and fucking leave me alone for the most part. They don't. I always wonder though too, is like, yo, what do these people do?
Dude, that's what they do, right?
No, I'm serious. I'm like, how the fuck you, like, do you work?
Yeah.
Like when people are protesting all the time,
Yeah.
not like the Hong Kong stuff, that's like do or die, but like regular protesting, I'm like, are you a full-time protester? I'm like, oh, are you fucking working? Like, what do you do? That's a whole different conversation, but I'm always interested where it's like, obviously, two different narratives aren't communicating. Yeah. They're just throwing stats. And both of them have their own, confirmation bias, sunk cost bias, and they're throwing narratives at each other. No one's listening. Yeah. So they can both agree. Both of them will agree that no one's listening. Yeah. In reality, when you look at it, a lot of people, whether it's left or right, they have a lot in common and very minority of differences. Those differences cause the chasm, the wedge. I'm interested though is, you've gone through your own experiences. I don't know if you want to talk about it. What has worked for you that you've utilized, whether it's mental frameworks or tools to kind of better know yourself and to better integrate information that you get?
It's a brilliant question, man. And it's like, it's one that I need to spend a little bit more time thinking about, because I think like it's been almost like I've been boiled in fine wine, let's call it, or whatever, like a toad that hasn't noticed, but over time I've just adopted a lot of these things. And I think I'm also going through this kind of point in my life where I'm building them out. I'm kind of categorizing them, putting them on paper just to really understand what it was that helped me. And I know what it was in some ways, and in other ways, cognitively, maybe I don't. But I think just part of it was knowledge I have acquired along the way. Things like, the Socratic method or the Stoics, or again, going back to Greece, or like the notions like the unexamined life is not worth living. And it's not because like you can't live life without it, but like if you don't examine things, you're defaulting into somebody else's worldview. And I think like I always wanted to push forward and to realize things on my own.
Is there an example that you had I want to say opinion, but a narrative on one thing, then over time you've changed it?
Oh, all the time, man. So here's something like, and this is a value. I think that we need to have the right values in life. And for me, a value is that I want to be fair and just, and I want to have an open mind. And sometimes, look, man, I hunker down too, especially like I can get into an argument very easily, right? But I think there's always this component of me where I wake up in the day and I'm like, the thing that I value the most is truth and honesty and like finding common ground.
Yes.
So like I try to extend olive branches to see where people are coming from. And look, man, sometimes I falter too, and I try to push my perspective, right? I've done that. But it's like every single time I kind of learn something from it. And I actually went down a deep rabbit hole through social media when all of this political stuff was happening. And
damn it, social media.
I started posting a lot, and just, it was a bit of a nightmare. And he kind of turned me into a bit of a curmudgeon, to be honest. Okay. And so like I had that, and I had to come out of it and be like, holy cow, like, there was a lot of people messaging me and saying, thank you so much for what you posted, hurrah, like you're speaking the truth.
Yeah.
But in reality, like, what difference did it make? And the other component is it probably pissed off some people who, whatever, they probably would have been pissed off for any other reason. But I think for me, another value is like to be good to people, and that's something that I had lost along the way somewhere in this search for truth.
Yeah.
So it's like the razor's edge, man. I think like you're always walking that balancing act. What's important?